Welcome to the show where we explore the minds behind the game. Today, we're honored to have Alan Jaeger, the visionary founder of Jaeger Sports, join us. Alan has revolutionized baseball and softball training by emphasizing the synergy between mental focus and physical conditioning. His innovative approach has been embraced by over 200 professional players, including Cy Young Award winner Barry Zito and organizations like the Texas Rangers and Cal State Fullerton. In this episode, Alan delves into the core principles that make his training methods stand out: the importance of mental discipline, the benefits of long toss, and the integration of yoga and mindfulness into athletic routines. Whether you're a coach aiming to elevate your team's performance, a parent supporting your young athlete, or a player striving for excellence, Alan's insights offer practical strategies to enhance both the mental and physical aspects of the game. Get ready to transform your approach to baseball and softball with actionable advice from one of the sport's most influential trainers. Alan,
Joey, how are you, buddy?
how's it going, man? I like that background.
Oh, thanks, man. I got a new camera because it was sort of bright with the sunlight. Is it okay?
Yeah, you got the jerseys back there. That's not a fake background. That's one of those real ones.
Exactly.
You know, where they blur it, but it's something else in the background, but you could tell it's fake because they're moving around and everything's kind of messing up.
Yeah, no, I've always had quote unquote. I like the real backgrounds. I think they're more, like organic, right?
Yeah. So
Um,
where are you based?
so I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get my camera right. I'm also trying to get this to
Oh, I got you
where.
frozen. Almost like looks like you're getting ready to hug the camera.
Can you see me okay? Hear me okay now?
I'm probably frozen too.
Yeah, you
There we
frozen.
go. There we go.
Yeah. I'm in Sherman Oaks. I'm right by
Yep.
UCLA, kind of.
Yeah, nice area there.
Yeah, I love it, man. I used to live, I was on the west side forever, Santa Monica, Brentwood for like 15 years. And then actually, because of the fires, it's a long story, but I ended up here. And
Oh, wow. So this is recent.
yeah, I just moved here 2 months ago.
Wow. So did you get displaced?
Well, my landlord in Brentwood home was in Palisades, and
Oh.
her house got partially burnt, and
Mhm.
we thought she lost the whole house. And so she actually tried to find a new place for like 2 months. And she couldn't because I offered the place back to her.
Yeah, good for
And
you.
yeah, and she didn't want to do that. So she tried, and then 2 months later, she finally reached out and said, "I can't find her." Because what people don't understand, it's like a lot of, things like that. There was almost 5,000 homes destroyed or partially burnt. So the
Mhm.
rental market just evaporated, as you can imagine.
Yep.
And so I was going to stay on the west side where I had been living for 15 years, but there was no inventory. I mean, it was like I put in crazy numbers per month to rent, like
Mhm.
crazy numbers.
Mhm.
And
Wow.
there was like literally like the numbers I put in, there was maybe like 4 or 5 dwellings in our houses to rent in all of Brentwood.
Mm-hmm.
And like 10 or 12 in Santa Monica. I mean, these are huge cities, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, we had one family. We were doing lessons at a local high school. That's where I do my hitting stuff. And there was a mom and her son, and the son looked like he was probably freshman, sophomore in high school. And they were walking up, and the mom asked, "What did she ask?" She asked, "Do you know?" It was something on campus. Do you know where the office is, or do you know where the baseball field is, or something to that effect? It was on a Saturday, and I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah." So I kind of pointed her, and I go, is your boy?" Because this was like early on in the season. It was around where the fires were, February, March, something like that. And and she goes, I go, "Is your boy play baseball?" And she says, "Oh yeah." She goes, "Actually, we've been displaced. We got a house in the Palisades that burned down, and we're here with family staying." I was like, "What?" So they were looking for high school for the kid, poor guy. So he's looking to play for Clovis West baseball, and I mean, I'm sure he started his season. They started all this stuff there, and then just all just went up in literal smoke. Crazy, crazy.
It's really hard to believe how devastating it is. Yeah, my business partner grew up in Palisades, so I know the area well, and
Hmm.
his parents are actually one of the few houses that really survived, and but his sister's house completely gone. Um,
Wow.
Another guy I've known for a long, long time. His kid was in our camp forever. Beautiful home in Palisades gone. Uh,
Ah.
just yeah, it's just when I'm born and raised here, so when you know the area as well as I do,
Hmm.
just from living here, you just can't get your head around. It'd be like, I know Fresno a little bit. It'd sort of just be like one day you wake up and Fresno's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, that Fresno's huge, so you have to pick maybe a pretty big piece of it. But
Hmm.
Palisades, as you probably know, Palisades is a pretty big city.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah. Anyway, it's now are you originally from the Fresno area?
Yep. Yep. Born and raised Fresno. Been here my whole life. So I high school, Bullard High School, and then went to Fresno State. Played baseball there for 4 years. So I kind of got here, rooted here, stayed here. Chances to go out and play other places in college, but decided Fresno just because at the time we were getting, I don't know, 2,500 to 3,500 at a game. And
Yeah.
I went on a recruiting trip to USF in San Francisco, and I love the city. It's one of my favorite cities, but they had two little bleachers on each side. So we weren't getting more than probably 50 at a game, and they were mostly students. So it's not something my parents they probably would come up and watch, but it wasn't the same, you know. So plus just
Yeah.
being local, this Fresno State locals, they really support. You got a lot of fans that come out that have been fans for decades, you know.
I know all about it, man. I played at Cal State Northridge back in the day, and
Yeah.
we went up to Fresno. Even back in the day, Fresno was just known as like I mean, first of all, it was a beautiful stadium,
Mhm.
and it was just yeah, we were a D2 midweek game probably, and there was a
Right.
lot of people there. So um, no, Fresno State's always had a great reputation. And I know Bates a little bit from Northridge. Was Bates your coach?
Mhm. Yeah. So Bates, his first year was my last year. So I had Bennett for 3, and then he retired, and then Bates came in my senior year.
Yep. Well, you were around some pretty legendary coaches, man. And did you cross paths at all with Tanner Erickson?
Yes. So Tanner and I went to the same high school.
Yep.
He was 2 years older than me, I think. So when I was a no, was he 3 years older? He might have been a senior when I was a freshman because I got
Okay.
called up my freshman year after our freshman season was done and they were in the playoffs and they let us enter squad and I got to hit off of him and I got a double. I hit a double off of him in the left center field gap or right center field, something like that. And they said, if you get a hit off of Tanner, like don't stare him down, don't pimp it. Just keep your head down because he'll look at you. And Tanner, he get hot headed, And his brother Christian was my year, so Christian was completely different than Tanner, and he was more of a football guy anyway. But yeah, I hit a double, I land on second, and I'm just kind of standing staring at the dirt. And I guess he was looking at me, waiting for me to do something. I didn't do anything.
That's hysterical. I'll tell him that story. He's one of my best friends in the world, man. So yeah, Tanner and I spent a lot of time together when he was a player, and he's an incredible person and
Great guy, great family. The whole family is awesome.
great family, and yeah, and we actually had some other really cool. We did a few clinics up there back in the day. The guy what's the legend that runs Clovis West, maybe?
Well, you have KP, Kevin Patrick was there, has been there for the last probably 15 years.
No, no, no. Sorry, someone that's been there like 30 plus. No, he's a
Oh,
legend. He's the
Mike
number one.
Noakes, Mike Noakes,
Mike Noakes.
or maybe Kevin. No, no, no. Kevin, Chris,
No,
and
I think it is a Mike, but it's not.
because
No,
Mike Noakes was Bullard
J-
baseball. He was there for He would have been if so after my freshman year, so Noakes was there. He ran summer camps, winter camps, and I mean, nobody ran camps like him. And I did those camps from like a late age 10 or 11 on. I ride my bike there in the summer and home and stuff like that. And if he wouldn't have, there was a little bit of a drama that happened. He ended up out as coach and ended up taking over at Central High School. And I think he was there for maybe 3 years and then ended up at Fresno City College coaching, helping out. If he wouldn't have jumped out of high school baseball, he'd be probably the winningest coach in all of high school baseball across the country. Like
Um,
he had so many wins and so many wins to the point to where Coach Patrick, the dad, so KP and CP's kids. So when Coach Patrick got done coaching at Clovis High, who put in probably 30 years there or close, when he retired, he barely eclipsed Mike Noakes in wins, barely. And he had 20 more years on Mike Noakes in the years, high school coaching years, right?
yeah, yeah, that's the guy. Patrick James, is it James? What's his
James
name?
Patrick. Yep.
That's him.
Yep. Yeah. And
Yeah, we
James is a
did.
legend too. Yeah. He was
Yeah,
a great coach. Yeah.
yeah, we did a clinic up at his place and really enjoyed meeting him. And so now, once you retired from baseball, you got instantly into coaching, and so it sounds like you're just more on you're a hitting guy. Do you coach the high school team as well?
So I do more my son. So I have a 12-year-old son and an 8-year-old or 9-year-old daughter. And so I've been coaching my son. I coached my daughter last year. She wanted to play baseball for whatever reason. She had two girlfriends, and I think she just wanted to do it because dad likes baseball and she's been watching her brother and that kind of thing. But yeah, so I've been team coaching my son, but mostly the hitting I've been doing since time in memoriam, 2005, 2006, something like that after I got done playing. So I've been doing the private lessons. We do small private groups. We'll do like a four or so in a group, and then we'll do like duels, 2-on-1s and 1-on-1s. So mostly just more of the private lesson stuff.
Great,
Yeah.
awesome, man.
Well, I want to get you. I mean, you're turning this into you're the host here. I want to actually ask you some questions if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do it. Look, before we get going, let me just I'm gonna use the restroom real
Yeah.
fast.
Go for
I
it.
know
Go for it. You got
we
it,
got
Alan.
that. Okay, man, we can go anywhere you want. So it's your show. So you know, you just I can go
Fire
anywhere
away.
you want. We can go into mental stuff. We can go into throwing. We can go into
We got a
mental
little
side of
bit.
hitting.
We got a little bit of everything, and I have 10 questions here. I don't know if we're gonna get through all of them because I'm sure it's gonna be a lot of good stuff that each one. So if we have to, maybe we can do a part two or something like that because I definitely want reading through all the questions. And they're nothing that you're not gonna be able to answer. I'm not asking you what the meaning of life is, but I'm sure you'd be able to give me a pretty good answer anyway. But yeah, I mean, these are all great questions. I think that we need to get these answered and out to my crew. So first one. So what was the moment that shifted you from being a traditional player into a transformational coach? So someone who's now reshaped how the baseball world and softball world views arm health and mental conditioning. So where was that? What was that moment that shifted?
Well, I mean, just like you. I mean, I was a player. At some point, I stopped playing. I got into coaching, and to be honest, I just had a strong visceral belief in certain things that I had come upon on my path. One of them was the first real big one was really meditation, mental training, Zen, Eastern philosophy, yoga. On the baseball side, I was a pitching coach at a junior college for 4 years, three and a half basically. And it's 3 full years and sort of a part-time. And then yeah, I started doing lessons with pitching, but really I found myself wanting to teach more long toss and throwing and arm conditioning and arm, developing arm strength. And so it's funny, like I just sort of fell into these parts of the games that at the time I just knew were the most neglected. The funny thing is the areas that I really fell into, the mental side, even though now it's gotten very mainstream, but in 1990 it was, you can imagine, throwing, which I know throwing, everybody knows is like, the foundation of baseball and softball. But again, you have to go back to 1990, 35 years ago. Throwing was nothing that was necessarily like out there as far as, there was pitching and pitching mechanics, there was hitting and hitting mechanics. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then yoga, the whole stretching, flexibility, balance, injury prevention. Yes, stretching was around. We did it every day at practice, as you know, but was it taken to the degree that yoga, which was very, very deep because it was not only stretching, it was mind, body, spirit, if you will. So yeah, I had this deep, deep drive and passion to share what I thought were just these really, really important parts of the game and life that, again, I think the key is I just knew they were very, very neglected. And so it was like a perfect storm in a good way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cool. And I wanted to tell you that this year, so I learned something new every year coaching my 12-year-old son, right? Well, not something, but some things more, plural. And this last year, from last year to this year, I had the whole team purchase Jaeger bands, J bands, we call them. So if they didn't know what they were, they now know what they are, and they all have their own. They all line them up. So we're the Oakland Athletics. We got, I think it was the green, it was green and white or green and yellow or whatever you guys had. So we ended up matching it to our team. So right when everybody gets there, they click them on to the chain link fence and they start their J band routine. So we started doing that this year and it's rec, very competitive rec league. And we've decided with my son not to do travel until 13, 14 years old, just because I didn't want the wear and tear on the arm and having to be out of town every weekend. And I wanted a start point and a stop point. So I wanted to also bring that into this rec league because nobody else does that. Nobody else. We're the only team that does this. And so I wanted to share that. And then the other thing is I love your yoga stuff because I became yoga certified. I started my journey right out of college going and getting certified in strength conditioning stuff from an NASM or something like that. And then I started to kind of get other certifications. One of them was from Yoga Fit, and it was Vinyasa yoga. So I taught yoga for probably 10 years. And I love it, and I can really appreciate it. And whether somebody's out there, I'm Christian, so the Eastern philosophy, I don't really bridge to, but the breathing, the spirituality side of it, and like being in tune and internal, it doesn't matter whether you're Eastern philosophy or Western philosophy. It all really, really works. So I love that part of so that kind of leads into the second question is, so you've said that yoga, Zen, Taoist principles deeply shape the Jaeger Sports method, right? So can you walk us through how this East meets West fusion became the foundation for your work with pro athletes and young players alike?
Man, what a great question. Yeah, well, to be honest, I was at Cal State Northridge. I was going through my own, challenges mentally, and so I got interested in. I saw a sports psychologist, which back then was a pretty new term, and and so I switched my major over to psychology because I was really interested in well, part of it was from just based on sheer um, the challenge of just me being in a very difficult place, and I wanted to kind of help sort out what was going on, and then clearly there was some curiosity too. So I switched
Mhm.
my major over to psychology, and it was actually in one of my upper division classes that one of the professors who was actually a practicing therapist,
Mhm.
but he had a very strong background in Eastern philosophy. And so our class basically went from like Socrates, the West, to the East. And it was called Contemporary Trends of Psychology. And he told a Zen story one day, which is a very well-known Zen story about a monk who goes to the master to try to, uh, learn more, or basically become a master. And the master's pouring him tea, and the tea starts to overflow in his cup. And the student says, "Stop, stop, stop! Your my cup is overflowing." And the master says, "Well, just like your mind is overflowing with whatever until you empty out your mind." It was sort of that idea of emptying the mind out. And I went up to the professor after class. I had never heard of Zen, and I asked him about it, and he told me about a book that it was from, the story, which was a book called Zen Flesh, Zen Bones. That led me to Alan Watts, who actually was an Anglican minister in England, who was the first Westerner to bring Zen from the East to the West, probably back in the 50s or 60s. And so, long story short, is what intrigued me about Zen, which everybody I've known especially in the sports world, but you can relate it to life, is that Zen is really about getting out of the thinking mind and into your instincts.
Mm-hmm.
So where psychology you can say has an angle of dealing with the thinking mind to, correct the thinking mind or process the thinking mind to resolve it, which is the same idea.
Mm-hmm.
Zen was like, without going into great detail, Zen was really more just about, instead of trying to get too much into what the thinking mind is thinking about, let's just go to the non-thinking part of you,
Mm-hmm.
which to me, like growing up in sports, I know my best games in anything I do, or nowadays my best, you know, conversations, or if I'm talking to a group or talking to you, the best part of me is going to come out when I'm purely instinctive and just
Mm-hmm.
going with the flow. And let's just say not thinking about anything per se.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the West meets the East. It's more of a, the East is, they've been, Zen is, comes out of Taoism, which you could say is, I think, between 3,000 and 5,000 years old. And I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it is just really grounded in nature in a way. It's grounded more in just the flow of life. There's a synchronicity or a harmony with life. Just like when you're in a, lost in a good movie or a good song, you're not thinking about anything. You're just there's this feel of flow. And as an athlete,
Mm-hmm.
when you've had your greatest games,
Mm-hmm.
you're not thinking about anything. You're flowing. And so I would say that was the part of Zen that just grabbed me. And so I really studied it. And one of the essences of Zen is Zen actually translated in Sanskrit, I think is means meditation, or it's translated into Japanese,
Mm-hmm.
means meditation. And so meditation became the absolute foundation for everything that I teach in life, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to get quiet. Like you said, this is universal. We're all trying to get quieter, clearer, more relaxed, more free, more at peace, more flowing, more joy, more in love. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, and to me, Zen is an amazing approach and way of life to just connect with those types of principles.
And I think quieting the mind is more relevant today than at any time with all the tech-based stuff. And it's really hard to now we've our boys this year for our rec league, our boys have been great. The families are great. We really haven't had too much drama. The kids are really receptive to the teaching and coaching. And albeit I'm a little bit more transparent. If today's conversation with Alan Jaeger lit a fire in you about the importance of the mental game, breath work, and developing focus, then you're going to love what we've built inside the Swing Shift Daily video series. Every weekday, we drop a quick, no fluff hitting lesson designed for busy parents and youth athletes who want real results, not more confusion. And just like Alan teaches, we go beyond mechanics. We focus on the complete hitter, from breath and body awareness to elite timing drills, visual strategies, and confidence building routines, all backed by the same sports psych principles we talked about today. Whether you're a parent trying to help your kid break out of a slump or a coach looking to layer in pro-level training without the overwhelm, Swing Shift delivers bite-sized, proven episodes that actually stick. So if you're ready to take what you learned today and turn it into daily action, head over to hittingperformancelab.com/swing shift and try the 7-day free trial. Let's build hitters who are strong in the box and between the ears. And honest, and I use a lot of the ChatGPT to help out on the communications, which, as us coaches, sometimes we could use certain trigger words or something, and, it really upset some parent, and that's not how you meant it and whatever. And so I almost over communicate stuff. And I think that helps a lot. But I think with the boys, and I try and give them tips and different things like that, especially early on the mental side of things. And, having ChatGPT act like a sports performance psychologist and doing that. But the flow and the meditation, I think, has a huge application nowadays with trying to get kids to not be as anxious because of all the almost turning them into ADD, ADHD type, and they probably wouldn't be if it wasn't for all that. So I love that. So J bands are everywhere now, from youth fields to big league clubhouses. And I told you that it's every player of ours has one. They got to warm up with it before the game. So take us back What was the aha moment that led to their creation, the J Band's creation, and how they have evolved as baseball has changed?
Yeah, well, this will tie back to our yoga background, which is um, so I'm going to bring in a person I mention a lot who's just he's such an amazing person, Perry Husband, who
Yep.
people know really well for
Yep.
effective velocity or
Yep.
EV. But Perry has done a lot of things in baseball, and he's just brilliant. And so I'll try to give you the short version. Perry, uh, I believe, was an All-American at Cal State Northridge. Went on to play for the Twins. He was an infielder, I think a middle infielder. Had
Mhm.
an arm injury. This is probably late '80s. And
Mhm.
back then, there wasn't a lot going on with I mean, bands or I mean, maybe in a rehab clinic. And
Mhm.
so, back then, if you have an arm injury, you start to think about your career maybe over. And so that really, really scared him. And so the PT had him do these band exercises. And he came back, and Perry's super, super smart. And so he
Mhm.
came back and he did the math right away. And he's like, oh, his arm came back. I if I had to guess, I think he said, better than ever. And
Mhm.
he knew it was the arm care. He knew it was the proactiveness of taking care of his arm and doing stuff for his arm. And so long story short is that even though Perry's a hitting guy, he started selling a version of the bands he was using. Um, I guess because intuitively he wanted to help the community and just have bring awareness. We're talking like 1990.
Mhm.
So Perry and I met because of a common player we both worked with. And I actually went out to watch this player play. It's actually out about an hour from here in Palmdale.
Mhm.
Perry happened to be at the game, and I had never met Perry before. I think I'd heard about him because the kid told me about his hitting coach.
Mhm.
Anyway, I think I'd heard about Perry because Perry was really, really, really good at what he did.
Mhm.
We started talking, and one thing led to another. We started talking about bands, and honestly, this was probably 1990. This is like 30 years ago, and I was it's hard to say this now that I'm into tools, but when I played, I wasn't into any training gizmos or anything. I was pretty hardcore, meaning I just was very competitive, and I worked and I did a lot of reps, fortunately, in everything I did, and I was, I think, very well prepared. But the idea of doing like this or that, but fortunately, I think I had just gone through my yoga training, and the idea of elasticity, of course,
Mhm.
rang a bell. And so, honestly, it's as simple as that. I started using Perry's bands with our players. I'm sure I started playing around with it, um, and one thing led to another, honestly, and we started having Perry make us more and more. I mean, we started out at one point, he might have made 10 for me for private lessons, and then we did a camp that we might have had 20 or 30 at him. And after about 5 or 6 years of Perry making these bands by hand, he actually ordered all the parts separately.
Mhm.
And at some point, he got tired because they took him a while to make the bands.
Mhm.
And so we took the bands over, and they were essentially the way they looked then, but we added the wrist cuffs. We added really more cushiony. We put our label on there,
Mhm.
and I think the carabiner clip, we got a sturdier clip, and we basically started manufacturing them ourselves, and we paid Perry
Mhm.
some royalties and stuff like that for a while, and it really started so innocently. I mean, honestly, there was a time I remember Jim Batcher, who's my current partner, who was a
Mhm.
former player, around 2000 became my partner, and I had a partner named Lou Burt before that as well. And
Mhm.
Jim and I, at one point, we had a box of 50 J bands in the office, and we bought 50 because we got a better deal on them, and we were hoping that we were going to be able to sell them at some point because we were kind of onesie twosies these, and there was no internet in
Mhm.
1995 or
Mhm.
2000, maybe started, coming around a bit. So really, the long answer to your question is it started with a meeting with Perry Husband, and again, I think, and also, you know what, how in life, when you get feedback
Mhm.
from people that's visceral and
Mhm.
consistent, it doesn't
Mhm.
matter what it is. you're on to. I don't mean we're onto it. We didn't invent the idea of internal external rotation movements and band work, but we just knew like we felt like we got this deep sense of aha. Instead of
Hmm.
saying on to it, I use the aha. We had an aha moment
Hmm.
that this was something because I will say one last thing so we can get to some
Yeah.
other things, which is I met early on someone that ran a PT clinic here in LA and who specialized in arm care, and she back in the day did like clinics, at least one big clinic with Job, and she keyword she told me this has got to be 30 years ago. She used the word prehab,
Mm.
and that to me is when the bells and whistles went off because I felt like I knew from dealing as a pitching guy, I knew that players would say after they went through thorough rehab for 3 months, 6 months, whatever it was, their arm never felt better, even though they just
Hmm.
had surgery. And our whole philosophy was simple. Well, whatever you did to get your arm to feel that great, even post surgery, why not do the same exercises before you throw
Hmm.
instead of, this and this, which is fine. I mean, you're trying to stretch your arm, but this was way, way more functional
Hmm.
movements. And of course, and to be honest with you, I just feel like the bands created their own sort of path because when you do something that feels that good to your arm and you have contrast of never doing it and then the first time doing it, you're going to tell your friends, you're going to tell
Hmm.
your coaches, are going to tell they're going to want their players to have it. And so the coolest thing I think about the J bands is that, well, number one is that they work so well. They really do work great. They
Hmm.
are keys to keeping your arm healthy and strong, but they take care of themselves. People want to talk about them. We've done like very, very little advertisement in 30 years because
Hmm.
people like to talk about them because they make you feel a lot better.
Yeah. And it's crazy because some products out there, and I would even put mine out there. I feel like I know some other ones, the VFlex Sports, they do like pitch recognition or pitch strike detection type their programming is pretty cool, and even Perry stuff. And a lot of people will not share that product or service or information because it's such a competitive advantage.
Mm,
And I think some of these products, I don't think it's true for all, but some of these products I think have that initial uphill battle. And it's crazy to me, but I understand at the same time, whereas the J bands really you don't have to worry about. I mean, I get it is a competitive advantage, but it's more of arm health and that kind of thing. And again, going back to this day and age and how I think I heard this study, I read this study 10 years ago that said that our athletes, our young athletes sit 80% of their day, sit 80% of their day. So, when we talk about in yoga, there's that kind of concave look that happens. You got text neck, everything's coming forward and the whole thing. And one of the best remedies for that, they say, is rock climbing because it
mm,
opens you up. It gets you in the opposite position, right?
interesting.
And so with the J bands, I think they're even more relevant today than they were back then. Back then they were relevant, but even more so probably with the higher priority because of the way the device, the sitting, probably worse now. 80% is probably conservative figure now, just with the video games and the whole thing. So you and I, when we were younger, we were outside playing a lot. We were moving our bodies and getting more of a balanced feel. And there was no yoga when we were growing up. There was, but it was kind of weird. But as the years went on and as people sat more, yoga became more relevant just because of the lifestyle changes. So, I love it. Like I said, I got our whole team to buy them. And so next question is, so there's still debate in the game around long toss distance. So let's move on to long toss. Throwing volume and whether, and this is what I love your posts on X. I like reading these, and whether pitchers need an off-season shutdown. So how do you respond to those who push back on your long toss protocols? Do people push back?
Well, when we first started, yes, because there was a couple of there were a couple of angles that people like to talk about. One was mechanically. I'd say in the 90s, the big thing was a sort of an ABC looking picture, very, robotic, as you know. But the idea was that if you do ABC, you're very repeatable.
Mm.
And so the pushback, which is funny because now it's one of the strengths of why we like long toss. We want proprioception, we want variability, we want the athlete to come out. We don't want it to look ABC. Actually, we want to free up the athlete because then you're into your innate movements. And if you're in your innate movements, you're going to organize naturally to repeat to the best of your ability. So the irony is that that first sort of, what I would call fallacy
Mm-hmm.
was debunked simply by well, over time now, I feel like the game luckily has gone this direction, which is more innate movements and individuality, which
Mm-hmm.
is hard to have individuality when everybody's throwing ABC. By the way, the ABC led to throwing programs not wanting to go much beyond 120 feet because they didn't want the ABCs to get messed with, right? The release point to get changed at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because the theory is that if you're ABC, you're going to have a consistent release point. One of my favorite lines about that, by the way, is Butch Thompson saying, "I can't sign my own name twice in a row the same way." Um, so shout out to Butch. And then the second big one was in the early 90s, maybe mid 90s, ASMI came out with a study on valgus torque beyond 180 feet. Um, there weren't a lot of subjects, and the guy in charge of it, Glenn Fleissig, is a friend of mine, and I just love Glenn.
Mm-hmm.
Then they came out with one in 2003 that was more substantial as far as the amount of players, and they tried to really, you know, cover as many bases as they could. But again, part of my issues with studies like that is that you need a controlled group of expert long toss pitchers as well that have been trained to long toss properly. For instance, just crow hopping off your back leg versus shuffling your feet
Mm-hmm.
can put a ton more stress on your elbow. And we've put out a lot of stuff lately on crow hopping off the back leg when long tossing as opposed to shuffling your feet.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Birmingham, Alabama, where they do their studies, I believe they did that study in October. Not that it's cold yet, but temperature could have something to do with it. And again, I would want to make sure that you had a control group where we were in charge of a lot of different variables. So the irony is only a couple of months ago, one of the people I rely on the most in baseball, especially on the science anatomy side, is Randy Sullivan.
Mm-hmm.
And Randy and I just co-wrote a return to throwing rehab manual as well. And Randy's a genius he's a genius when it comes to a lot of things, but especially kinesiology, anatomy, biomechanics, um, and feel. He's a pitching coach with feel to match the science.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a recent study that actually the whole valgus torque at 180. Randy actually had found a study where at 200 feet, the valgus torque actually starts to diminish in
Mm-hmm.
distance. And the bottom line is this: Stan Conte, who's extremely well known, uh, I guess he would be considered an ATP, an athletic trainer, but he actually was in charge of the Dodgers medical services at one point and the Giants. So he's a huge research guy. And he told me for an article I wrote about this topic that, well, he would expect there to be more stress on the valgus torque because the body needs the stress to adapt and break down and grow and break down and grow, just like you do in anything else
Mm-hmm.
with evolution. So I think that freaked out a lot of people, to put it bluntly, that study in the early 2000s. I'd say nowadays, long toss is very, very mainstream, and I think that people just accept the fact that distance is vital for not only velocity, but more importantly to us. Distance is vital for arm conditioning, arm endurance, recovery, feel, athleticism, explosiveness. Um, so I feel like that whatever went on in the 90s and early 2000s has fortunately transformed, to use one of your words earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be honest with you, I rarely get, I don't know, maybe they don't want to say to me about it because I know how big I'm into long toss, but these conversations were so rampant in the 90s and the 2000s, the first 10 years.
Mhm.
Rarely. It still comes up once in a while, but rarely do I feel like I have a debate or a discussion with someone who's pushing back on. There's some out there for sure, but
Mhm.
rarely it feels like if you talk to the coaches out there that I feel like are in the, really the leaders in the field nowadays. They're all about athleticism. They're all about freedom. They're all about letting it go.
Mhm.
They're not about linear, restricted,
Mhm.
monitored throwing. And I will say one other thing. There is a whole workload thing out now, especially in professional baseball. And I do feel like that has also created some like misnomers on the value of long toss because I feel like where they still are good with long toss, I feel like that they've put a restriction on the amount of throwing
Mhm.
because of workload management.
Mhm.
And so therefore it's much harder to, let's say, long toss the way we want players to long toss. Not that you have to long toss every day, obviously, um, but I think just to put this all into one quick response, I would just say that, believe me, I was on red alert for 20 years, 25 years with naysayers or people that I thought were putting out information that were actually hurting. I think this whole 120 mentality, this whole linear program was the single greatest influencer on all these arm injuries that we've seen in the last 25 years.
Mhm.
Single greatest by far. There's not a close second. Was this whole idea of restrictive throwing, linear throwing, robotic throwing,
Mhm.
mechanical based throwing, um, out to, let's say, 120, 150 feet. Absolute, the single greatest variable
Mhm.
in why we've had all these arm injuries. And so, yeah, so fortunately, it doesn't really come up much anymore, or at least doesn't come up with me. But, and I know I have a lot of friends now in pro ball. I have a lot of friends in college, baseball, high school. It feels fortunately just like the norm now.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you on that. I feel like the robotic, the restricted, we always played long toss. I mean, it was pretty cool to watch one of our left-handers at Fresno State, Mike Hernandez, who had a golden arm, but unfortunately didn't want to go to class. And but we'd watch him from home plate take a wasn't even a crow. I think it was a shuffle he did, and he'd throw it over center field. I mean, that's 400 plus feet. And it was so cool to watch. And he was a big, gangly guy, 6'3, 6'4, just knees and elbows. So he had some levers and he had probably some genetic stuff there. But I thought that was cool that he could do that. I couldn't do that. Like, I could probably throw it to my position in center field from home plate. I could probably throw it to myself, but I couldn't throw it that far. And I thought that was pretty cool. And I think I was talking to one of my hitters who's pretty smart. His dad, so he's a going to be a freshman in high school. He's gotten a lot of really good elite training early on, and I'm not just saying like from me or anything, but from pitchers and his dad. His dad and I played baseball together at Fresno State. His dad was a pitcher. He was a relief guy. A year older than me, smart dude, and they talk a lot about pitching and different things like that. And we were talking about Tommy John and all that, and he was saying that because they're doing a throwing program, they're using J bands, they're doing it right, and they're working with a guy here locally, Marcus Walden, who played in the bigs he was off and on for probably good 10 years. I mean, he was on a lot more, but as of recently, he's been more off and on, and I think he played for Boston, the Red Sox, recently. So they were talking about there's a difference between throwing at 100% intensity in a game and throwing long toss and regular toss that's you're not going 100% intensity. There's a difference there, and I think with a lot of these kids, and we had a kid on our team this year that decided not to. He just kind of, I don't want to say quit, but he quit on us like 5 games left of the season in our rec season because he's playing on a travel team who was playing. We were playing Monday, Friday nights, one game. They were playing Tuesday, Thursday. They added Wednesday, and they were playing on the weekend. That's 5 game. That's 5 days. And then we were the 2 days. He was playing 7. We were the 2 that got cut, but he's still playing five games, and that's 100%. If you've been nodding along with Alan Jaeger's wisdom in this episode about arm health, mental training, and building routines that truly protect and prepare young athletes, then this part's for you. One of the most powerful tools Alan mentions is the J bands, a cornerstone of Jaeger Sports' arm care system. These resistance bands aren't just another warm-up gadget. They're trusted by MLB teams, top college programs, and youth coaches nationwide to build strength, improve recovery, and prevent injuries. Here's the deal. If your kid's shoulder or elbow matters to you, and let's face it, if they throw or swing, it should, then J bands belong in your training bag. They're portable, simple, and backed by Alan's decades of research and experience. Head over to hittingperformancelab.com/JBands to get yours. You'll also find setup tutorials, the full J-Bands routine, and parent-friendly guidance on how to use them the right way. Protect your player's future. Start with J-Bands today. Anytime you're in a game, you're 100%. So for me, in my humble opinion, I think a lot, it's just the 100% games. How many games can we play in a season? That's like what it seems the attitude is. How many games can we play? And I remember he was a strength conditioning guy. He trained us in college. Steve Sabonia, he passed away like 4 or 5 years ago, but he's in the strength conditioning world. And I remember him one time when his kid was 12 was boasting to me that his kid played 165 games the year before. And I'm going, a 12-year-old.
Yeah, first of all, sorry to hear about Steve. Yeah, look, at the end of the day, everything has a rhythm, and the rhythm of throwing to me is pretty straightforward if you know how to listen to your arm and your body, and it will not let you throw with high intent too many times in a row. That's why even though we're massive into throwing it basically as far as you can, even in your best scenario in the off season, it's still Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I mean, we're still having guys throw 6 guys and gals, 6, 7 days a week. But 4 of those days are what we call more massage throwing. You can still throw a massage throughout the 220, 240. You don't have to go to 300 plus, but we do a lot more volume and low intent massage throwing to condition the arm. But even, like I said, in a best case scenario where you're not even pitching in games or off the mound yet, but you're in great shape, we still just really work more on that Monday, Wednesday, Friday as your big distance pull down, high intent days. But yeah, I'm as you well know, there's many concerns about these programs where these kids are throwing with high intent too often. It's not natural, and not when you're mixing in pitching in game situations where you have to double cut, throw somebody out home plate, throw it as hard as you can.
On a normal routine ground ball to left field or center field.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that if you play 5, 6 games a week, even if you're not a pitcher, you have to get your arm ready for high intent throws in case the first inning you have to throw somebody out the plate or you go into the hole if you're the shortstop. So yeah, it is an art form. It's not straightforward in a lot of ways, but in other ways, it's funny. I put a tweet out today. It's unbelievable that we're talking about this, but the tweet is basically, the single most important principle of any throwing program anywhere, even ours. You have to learn how to listen to your arm and let your arm dictate what it wants and needs each day. And if you do that, you're going to find out that it wants to do a lot, assuming you didn't throw 80 pitches in a game the day before. But generally speaking, if it's in shape, it wants to stay in shape. It's going to want to do a pretty good amount each day. And I've told this to people before, a good amount could be, even if you're a 300-foot plus athlete, you might only go out to 120, 150, 180, but you might stay out there for 25 minutes because you're just flushing and conditioning and you're doing a lot of relaxed throwing and you're setting up your next day, as opposed to 5 minutes of throwing to 60 feet because you threw yesterday and you're saving your arm for, yeah, we're, as you can tell, big into conditioning, but smart conditioning.
Right. So you often say warm up to throw, not throw to warm up. So for coaches stuck in old school habits, how do you shift their mindset and help them trust your throwing model, especially when the stakes feel high? This is probably your travel ball coaches out there, folks.
Well, to me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, what's the most important thing? Keeping your kids healthy. There's not a close second. You have to start from that premise. If you start from that premise, you can't lose. Well, if you have to get there 20 minutes early, or you have to sacrifice BP because you're dealing with an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 16-year-old, doesn't matter. There's nothing to think about. The priority is that every day that I'm chaperoning these kids, that I'm in charge of their health and well-being, across many platforms, not just throwing. But if my job is to make sure I'm the caretaker of their arms, which is what you are as a coach, whether you've signed up for it or not, you are once you're a coach. And priority number one is you have to have, I don't care what you do, you need some type of arm care, arm prep
Mm-hmm.
prior to throwing. That's just assume it's going to be 10 minutes without thinking about it. Our J-band program, if you really get good at it, you could probably do it in 5 to 8 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But whether it's bands or whatever, you just need to know that there's 8 to 10 minutes that's just put away, that's automatic. And then you need to put aside for the younger kids, they could probably get away with 10 to 15 minutes. But for the once you're in high school, it's got to be a minimum of 15 to 20 minutes
Mm-hmm.
of throwing. Now we're talking 30 minutes. Well, look, it says to a coach that's got a travel ball team or X amount of time at the field, they may say, well, that's a lot of time. Well, what's the flip side? The flip side is you want to put your kid in line to break down and have an arm injury. So to me, it's as no-brainer as it gets. And I respect the fact that coaches have to deal with variables of like time commitments or how long they're at the field. But look, if it's my kid, we'll drive ourselves and get there an hour early, or we'll go down to the if there's nowhere to throw like long toss, we'll go find a net. We'll stop. We'll nowadays you can Google map it. We'll find a park close by.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get there early and get see. There's ways to do this. There's always a way to do it. Always. You could do 120 forward throws with your J bands, but make sure you take the wrist cuff off and put your fingers through it so you get the wrist action. But you can do 100 throws with the J bands. That's going to feel like a pretty darn good throwing session, even if you don't even touch a ball until that last few minutes where you can maybe, again, I hate to say a few minutes, but if you're in a weird situation where you literally have, I'm not going to say it, you should never have a few minutes to throw.
Yeah.
You should always have a
Make
proper
room.
amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is, I hope that resonates with anybody listening to this, that this is not a debate. This is not a negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
This is just the truth. The truth is that your kids need 8 to 10 minutes of arm care, and even the youngest kids need 10 to 15 minutes to throw. There's nothing more to talk about.
And the good news for a coach who maybe is trying to figure out what to do pre-game prep, this takes half hour of that out of the way. You already know what you're going to do. They have their J-band prep, then you have your catch, and that's a half hour out of if you get there an hour before game time, that's a half hour that you already know what you're doing. You don't have to worry about anything else. You don't have to worry about, do we have to do grounders? Do we have to do fly balls? Do we have to hit into a net? Things like that. Like that's a half hour that's done. Like you don't have to even touch that. Don't have to change that. Maybe the distancing and how many throws each, but little acute stuff, repetition stuff, but that's already decided. And that's why this year last year we were getting to games 45 minutes before game time. And like I felt bad. You said, coaches, you're in care of those kids' arms, whether you like it or not, whether you're playing rec ball or travel ball, you as the coach are the leader of those kids' arms. And it killed me last year when we didn't draft correctly. We didn't get enough pitchers. I didn't convert more arms. Sometimes I'll convert a player who's pretty accurate in the field. We'll convert him into a pitcher. And I just didn't have enough pitching last year. And we had to lean on some guys more and we never really threw the max amount. I think one of my guys maybe did 80 pitches, but he had a pretty good arm. We didn't do that often. It was usually between 40 and 60 a game if they did it. But I felt bad because a lot of these kids' arms were hanging. So one of the big things this year was in the draft was to get more pitching and to make sure we got accurate throwers and defense, because that gives me an option to convert them into a pitcher. And it's easy to convert when you got a guy that can throw accurately, to me. And then we added the J-band routine. And we don't have arms hanging. Arms are not hanging this year. And with the combination of all that, more pitching, converted good strike throwers to strike throwers, and J-band routine. And we play catch. We do like what you're saying. It's probably a good half hour before the game that they're doing their J-bands and they're playing catch. And I think that's just an easy half hour that you don't have to worry about any kind of, what do I need to do for that first half hour or the second half hour of a game? I think that's smart,
And also, if you're doing this for kids that, let's just say, are between 8 and 12,
Yeah.
and these coaches are doing this every day that they're at the field for half an hour, I cannot even begin to explain the exponential effect on that kid's path with their arm. Can we guarantee that everybody's going to throw as hard as Hunter Green? No, but I can tell you this for sure. These kids that are getting this deep education at a young and provided the time to actually train their arms, the dis again, the exponential effect on how that arm is going to grow when they're 13, 15, 17, 19, we can't even talk about it. We can't comprehend it. And so it's that, boy, you feed those arms at a young age that way. You provide the time, and you're positioning these kids to find out what's in that. I call the arm a treasure chest.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has a treasure chest, and the goal of every athlete should be, what's in my treasure chest? And the way you're going to find out, especially for the young kids, is doing things like arm care, being put in a position, if fortunately that your coaches give you time to throw and condition your arm consistently. Now all of a sudden you're tapping into that arm, and that's setting the tone for years later. That again, we can't. There might be a kid that you think has a very average arm when he's 8 or 9, but because of what you did for him, Mother Nature kicks in, but his training kicks in, and his love for throwing kicks in, and his awareness of throwing more, not less, kicks in. And
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, he's a first round pick because he's throwing 95, just because his arm, it's like learning a language when you're 6, 7 years old, right? You learn Spanish or the guitar at a young age. It's unbelievable how quickly you pick it up,
Mm-hmm.
so that when you're 15, you could be fluent. I mean, with no problem. And versus teaching someone at 14 years old. And throwing is similar. Arm care is similar. You get that stuff going at young ages. There's no one can explain this because it's so hard to project, how good of an effect this can have. But I'm telling you, I've been around this game a long, long time, and I can't prove this for sure, but I can say that when kids get on this stuff at a young age, the upside, you open the door to this upside that is unbelievable. And I hope that the parents listening to this and coaches get that, because that's why you're making the sacrifice of time now. Because that arm, we want the arms to be healthy, number one, but two, we want to find out what's in the arm.
Mm-hmm. I agree completely, 100%. So I'm going to go last question because I got to pick up the kiddos today, but I'd love to do a part two for sure, if you're okay with that. And I got some other questions I'll have in that one that will kind of dig deep. But so your book, Getting Focused, Staying Focused, puts mental training on equal footing with physical prep. So what's one mindset habit you've seen transform an athlete's performance under real game pressure?
Great question. Number one is the practice of meditation. To me, is the foundation of what we teach, because that's your core, and that's what you get intimate with through practice, like any other practice.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd say as a strategy out on the field, we've boiled everything down really to one line, more or less. I mean, as you know, there's a lot of depth to it, but and the line is basically identify your process and be great at it. And by great, we mean Bruce Lee 10th degree black belt. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a quick example. If I'm a pitcher, um, over time, I pitched till I was 45, and my process would be very straightforward: breathe, have a focal point, and then attack the focal point.
Mm-hmm.
Those three things, if I'm doing those three things for 2.5 hours, I already know I'll pitch the best game of my life, or my ability to pitch the best game of my life based on what kind of shape I'm in and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Hitters, breathe, see the ball well, hit it hard. So by having a process, having what I call these three constants, they're constants, they don't change.
Mm-hmm.
Bases loaded may change, inter squad to a real game may change, championship game may change, right? Scouts at the game may change,
Location.
location may change, but if
Mm-hmm.
you told me that I know the three constants that are the keys to me executing my plan to the best of my ability now, forever, that's now, forever,
Mm-hmm.
then sign me up. Because now, if I get any other thoughts about any other variables, those aren't the three constants,
Mm-hmm.
I can immediately assign those to being distractions and drama and the future and the past. So again, The process is identify, in this case, we do 2, 3, 4, but identify a few things that are repeatable and resonate with you that are your keys to executing your plan now.
Mhm.
And everybody's may be different, but the bottom line is this: if you know your three constants and you lock into those three constants, what you're basically saying is that I've created a formula that's creating the best soup of all time, and I already know the ingredients. Now it comes down to how well, excuse me, am I going to stick
Mhm.
to my ingredients, which is where you can see meditation plays a huge role for
Mhm.
many other reasons, including that.
Mhm.
And so that would be the big tagline for anybody listening to this, is that identify what your process is. Those are constants. And then once you know your three constants or so, now you know everything else in life. Everything, big or little, is a
Mhm.
variable. So no matter what you tell me going into my at bat, I could be in the backyard or the seventh game of the World Series.
Mhm.
If I truly trust my constants, my process, what that does is that then supplants, if you will, takes place of every single thing else that could be going on in the world,
Mhm.
because I have identified the three things that again are leading to me executing my plan to position me to be in the best position possible, to be the best version of me.
Right.
And that's
Yeah,
it.
and that's especially the meditation side of things. I did that. This is after playing. I wish I would have had access to apps like Headspace or Calm, and sure there's many others now, but I did this later in life, probably in my 30s. I probably put in a good year of consistent, probably at least 5 days a week, 4 days a week of 15-minute meditations through Headspace, the app Headspace. And you can pick different ones. It has ones for you feel like you got more anxiety, take these. If you have more, it's kind of cool, like the smorgasbord, the sizzler of meditation, right? Different programming. And I felt like after that, I remember before that, if I get stressed, I'll tend to like chew my tooth, and then your jaw gets sore, and it's like, where is that coming from? So having the awareness to be able to keep a slight micro gap between your molars, and that was something that I gained from that 1 year of being consistent with it. And I still, even now, like if I catch myself start to do it, then I start to be more mindful of that gap in the molars. So I'm not clenching my teeth. So we started doing deep breaths with our hitters, because now we have 2 games left, regular season, and we're going into playoffs for our rec team. And so we start to get into a little bit more pressure. So I have bullet points. I have 4 little motivational bullet points we do right before we start our process before the game. And one of the big ones we've been doing recently is breathing. And the meditation side of things, I think, is huge for those out there listening, whether it's a Headspace app or Calm, or, I don't know if you have another app or whatever that you recommend on that side of it.
Well, we just have some things online that are free, like on YouTube, a guided meditation.
Mm.
Our
Hmm.
book has lots of different ways to do mental practices, um, articles, I've written that are online, just to kind of like, I wrote an article called Mental Practice Plans. This is like a
Mm.
10-minute breathing exercise that if you're a coach, you can just sort of do the A, B's, and C's of how to take your players through a mental practice session with breathing.
Hmm.
So yeah, we have definitely resources. We don't have apps, but we have resources like that.
So getting focused, staying focused, that book's got a lot of that in it.
A lot.
Good,
Yes.
good. Okay, well, Alan, I gotta go here, but where can people find you? This is part one. We'll have more of it, but where can people find you? We talked about getting focused, staying focused, some tools, of course, J bands. Go ahead and give your thoughts and advice on those out there that want to take a little bit of action.
For sure. And real quick, when you said that, something I say, I have to tell you, I stole it from Barry Zito, which was you warm up to throw versus throw to warm up. That was one of his, that 25 years ago, maybe.
Yep.
But I love that line.
Mhm.
Jaegersports.com is just the simplest way to get a hold of us. At Jaeger Sports on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. And then, yeah, we're real easy going if they reach out to the office for anything. And then I just let people know, like on YouTube, we have tons, and on our website as well, we have tons and tons of free resources, whether it's mental training, throwing, arm care. So yeah, easy to find us.
Yeah, one of the big things I always tell people, a really good company or a really good office of service or product when they have a lot of resources, information, especially YouTube videos. One of the other guys I love is David Weck from Weck Method. They have tons and tons of videos out there. So you could do this all yourself. And that's always kind of the tenet, right? Hey, you got a DIY portion of this, but then you also have a done for you too that's going to be a little bit more. And I've noticed that about you guys. You can go on, you can find any kind of, you want to find a throwing program, you can go on, you could probably find it on whether it's on your Twitter or YouTube or whatever. But of course, you're going to need the Jaeger bands to be able to do some of that. And I'm sure you have even exercises you don't need. I mean, yoga, you mentioned, is a big discipline that you can do a lot of stuff there as well if you can't afford the Jaeger bands, even though I think they're pretty affordable anyway in this day and age with everything else. A cup of coffee's costing $50 over at Starbucks now.
We haven't
And
changed
you
the
drink
price.
that, you don't get that back.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and the J bands, I don't think we've changed the price in 30 years. And also, um, we get some people that will send us pictures. Like I just had Marcus Elliott from P3 Performance sent me a picture a couple days ago. I must have given him those J bands 12 to 15 years ago, and he took a picture of them. And he actually said something like, they still work great. Or so if you
Mhm.
amortize, which my brother would appreciate as a CPA steward, if you
Yeah.
amortize 34.95 plus whatever shipping and tax
Mhm.
over the course of even a year, let alone five,
Oh,
it's
pennies.
yeah, it's a pretty good deal.
Return on investment. I mean, people probably easily pay $100 for the system, and that's probably even being conservative.
Yeah, yeah. We feel good about the fact that we have a lot of free content so people can learn our
Mhm.
program and learn it well. We even have all of our J-band exercises, including how to do it safely on,
Hmm.
on YouTube, and we have a clip from our Thrive on Throwing video online about how to long top. I mean, we have so much
Hmm.
free stuff, so it's there, and yeah, hopefully people will take a good look at it.
Subscribe. Yep. Yep. Keep up the good work, Coach Allen. And we'll look forward to a part two. And thank you for your time. And I know you've got a busy schedule, so I appreciate that. Appreciate you making the time.
Yeah, thanks a million for having me on, man. I really enjoyed it and I appreciate it.
All right, Coach Allen. We'll see you next time.
See you, brother.
All right, I'll be in touch.
Sounds
Bye.
great.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to the Swing Smarter Hitting Training podcast. If today's episode with Alan Jaeger gave you a fresh perspective or even just one solid takeaway, do us a favor, subscribe wherever you listen, leave a quick review, and share it with another coach or parent in your circle. And if you're hungry for more tools, drills, and expert insights to level up your hitter's performance, head over to hittingperformancelab.com. We've got free resources and premium programs to help your ball player unlock their full potential. See you in the next episode. Keep swinging smarter.